Welcome back, Nick Lenz. Comic Corner Classic, Non-Classic. This episode number 1091, Doubleshot number 985. I got two Marvel trades. Both of them basically kind of like big collections. First up it is She-Hulk. The complete collection by Dan Slott. Yes, this collection started his run for the book. For a lot of people, when it comes to Dan Slott, this is usually the first book that people think of when people think of Dan Slott. And this probably was his first exposure writing Spider-Man. Now, the only book he wrote prior to this was the GLA miniseries, which came at the same time this ongoing series is. This is technically the start of his time at Marvel. This book contains the entire first volume of the She-Hulk series, plus the first 5 issues of the second volume of the series. Now, the neat thing about issue 3 is that it's a 100 issue for She-Hulk, which makes her the first ever female superhero at Marvel Comics to have 100 issues published. Now, here's the thing about the character of She-Hulk. Who created this character? Stan the Man Lee did. And from what I've read, it was his last major creation for 10 years. Because after he created this character, he didn't create a single new character again until he created Ravage, 2099. Oh yeah, and in case you're wondering, where does the 100 issues come from? Well, her first series was called The Savage She-Hulk, which was 25 issues, published back in the 1980s. Yep, after the series basically ended, she got a series in the 90s, The Sensational She-Hulk, which lasted for 60 issues, her longest book to date. This book comes close, basically, to that, and, yeah. Now, this comes after basically having the pages of Avengers Volume 3, where she's basically able to turn back into regular good old She-Hulk thanks to the Red Affair. The Red Skull Affair basically happened in the main Avengers book. Yeah, the Avengers book basically sometimes would do this at times where they will start a storyline and eventually spin off an ongoing series. The only time I can think of this happened when it comes to the Avengers was actually for the Invaders. Well, the New Invaders, but the book got canceled 10 issues. This book managed to last from 2004 to 2008. By the time I got into comic books, this book was already publishing by the time I got into the series. Yeah. Because when I started reading comics, this series had probably just started. I didn't read it at that point, but I did eventually read it. Now this book is also, believe it or not, because it's basically containing 17 issues. This is a combination of 3 trades. Yes, 3 trades. Yep. And She-Hulk. Now, in these issues, a lot of this stuff is one-shot issues. Occasionally, you might get occasional 2-parters, but mostly it's very serialized series. Excuse me. And this is the stuff people like Dan Slott doing. Because here's kind of the thing about his run for the book. His run was not very long. I mean, his run was only a little over 3 years. Yeah, he left with the 21st issue of the second volume of She-Hulk. Yep. Yeah. And there was this thing where, when the first issue opened her with in bed with some random guy. Yeah, apparently it's revealed at the start of the series, she apparently started doing this thing where she just goes to a bar, gets drunk, and then wakes up with some random guy in the Avengers Mansion. And apparently she does very frequently, ever since she got the ability to turn back to Jen Walters. Yeah, apparently there was this thing basically for a long period of time where she couldn't turn back into regular Jen Walters. She was stuck in She-Hulk form. It was due to some radiation she suffered. And then thanks to the Red Skull, oh yeah, she can actually turn back to that. Yeah, my guess that was a retcon. That's probably maybe Dan Slott put a suggestion in the whoever was writing the book at the time. I think it was Kurt Busiek writing the Avengers book at that point. I think it was him or it was Jeff Johns' book. I'm not sure who was writing that storyline. But yeah, and of course takes some various clients here. Takes on a guy called Danger Man, who does get cured after a couple issues, and she starts a relationship with John Jameson. Yes, you don't know who the heck is John Jameson. It's J. Jonah Jameson's son. You want to know what this guy's full name is? Now, J stands for John. J. Jonah Jameson's full name is John Jonah Jameson Jr. Yeah, in case you're wondering, that was Slott's idea, basically, I think, to reveal that it was his full name. because introduced his father during during a later storyline. Yeah. I think it was him or one writer who did that. Yeah, John Jameson's full name is John George Jameson III. And he's an astronaut. And in case you're wondering, did She-Hulk and him meet prior to the series? Oh yes, they met back in the 80s. When he was Star God and she was briefly traveling in space. That's how they met. And she basically first works for the DA's office until she gets let go, and then she's hired by a firm she really wanted to work for a long time. And she gets along with the partners really well, and she basically gets hired, but she only can do like her work not in She-Hulk form, but actually in Jen Walters form, basically human form. And for some enemies who don't recognize her in her human form, basically there's a spell put on her in order to make sure she's able to basically have a normal life when she's not being She-Hulk. Yeah, that was done with the Scarlet Witch before she went frickin' nuts. Thank you, Bendis, for doing that. Yeah, it's probably by far, when it comes to Bendis, it's one of the most dumbest things he did at Marvel, was by turning Scarlet Witch nuts, and then basically have her do the whole House of M stuff. Oh, in case you're wondering, does House of M ever affect the series? No. It never does. Not that I can think of. Oh, there's one issue that does kind of mildly affect it, but not very much. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, the original cover price of this book was $34.99. I paid, like, basically this original was like $35. I paid $7 for this book. Yep. And, like, she also gets, yeah, in case you're wondering, is there any, like, major superheroes pop in this book? Yes. We get appearances by Edwin Jarvis, who pops up occasionally in the book. The Wasp shows up a few times. Spider-Man shows up a few times in this book. Oh, yeah, and there was a joke in here about, and that time you and the Juggernaut, and she says, I didn't sleep with the Juggernaut. Yeah, in case you're wondering, there was a brief recurring joke in the comics because of a two-part issue happening in the pages of Kenny X-Men, where She-Hulk had a one-night stand with the Juggernaut, and it was later retconned, I think, in this book, probably because maybe Slott didn't like that very much. Yeah, he retconned it where that She-Hulk was actually a doppelganger from a different universe. Yep. So yeah, She-Hulk never slept with the Juggernaut. Yeah. And basically she starts a blossoming relationship with John Jameson. I will not get into how this relationship ends. It's one of the most stupidest things that I think it may have been either Slott or the writer who replaced him who basically ended their relationship, because I thought it was really good in the series. Yeah, at the end of the first volume, the law firm she works for, the main building, gets actually destroyed by some villains who break out of a prison known as the Big House. Yeah, this place was designed by Hank Pym, and having some very familiar villains, like, basically the Big House is meant to replace the Vault. The Vault, in case you don't know what that is, that was a superhuman prison that existed as far back as the 80s, and it was destroyed by the end of the 1990s. In case you're wondering, which writer basically caused destruction of that place? That was John Ostrander when he started his Heroes for Hire series. Yeah, the first issue headed where the UFOs actually destroyed the prison. Big House is one of its replacements along with the Raft. Raft is mentioned in here, but they don't go much into it at all. Yeah. And, like, she does fight Titania a couple times in this book, which she's probably the only recurring enemy for She-Hulk in this. She's got she's like, oh yeah, she's got a rogues gallery. One person, Titania. That's all that she has. Yep. But this by far, and also we get brief appearances by Leonard Samson. We get some of her own original characters because Slott is known for doing this. Yeah, giving She-Hulk her own supporting cast is fine because she doesn't have much of a supporting cast at all. I mean, she barely has any. I mean, in the case of Spider-Man, people didn't like what basically Slott did with Spider-Man by creating his own supporting cast. She-Hulk works for that because She-Hulk basically, I don't think hardly even has one. And basically he used the same concept with the Iron Man series, where he basically took existing characters, created like one or two, and basically created his own supporting cast for Iron Man, which is fine, because I think that works for Iron Man. She-Hulk, I think, was a good start for him, and this book is purely fantastic. I highly recommend if you're a fan of She-Hulk, or if you're a fan of Slott's non-Spider-Man stuff. This is one of the good stuff. I give this book roughly a 9.5 out of 10. Now, in case you're wondering, have I reviewed anything that's non Spider-Man related by Dan Slott. Aside from this, I have reviewed the first 2 trades from his Iron Man run. I have reviewed the first 2 trades of the Fantastic Four run, and the first trade that collects his Silver Surfer run, which was not very long, by the way. It was a very brief series. In case you wonder how long the series was, it only lasted about a couple years before the series got abruptly canceled. Yeah. Yeah, the first volume was like 15 issues. The second volume was like 13 got canceled. Wasn't that very long of a series? Yep. Now, this trade is published by Marvel Comics, but these were issues published by Dark Horse, and I don't like the fact this trade does not even mention Dark Horse at all, despite the fact the public knows this was not published by Marvel Comics, the original issue in this book itself, because originally, Marvel was not the original publisher, it was Dark Horse. Yet, for some reason, Marvel has sort of an anti-sentiment against Dark Horse for some reason when it comes to Star Wars. What book is this? This is Star Wars Epic Collection, The Empire, Volume 2. This collects Dark Times, issues 17 through 23. Yeah. Here's the thing about this book. Now, I had not read a lot of the original EU stuff for the comic books for Star Wars. The other things, now when I jumped onto Star Wars comic book wise, it was actually like regularly reading it toward the tail end of the Dark Horse run. Like the other books I did read while they were coming out, like mostly online, was the Star Wars book by Brian Wood, which was really good by the way. The Jedi Everence series, it was series set in the past, and it was also Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir, the second volume for Star Wars Legacy, which that volume was not read by John Nestor. He wrote the first volume for the series, and he wrote the second one. Focused on a completely different character, focused on a woman from the Star Wars line. The first one was basically also for Star Skywalker line. And it was also the Son of Dathomir series. This is technically the second Dark Horse comic, Star Wars Dark Horse comic I have reviewed, because the first one I reviewed was Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir. And here's the thing. That book is canon. This book is not. Now, in case you're wondering about like when does this book take place, it takes place during the 19-year time skip between episodes 3 and 4. Now, in the current canon stuff, the only things they've actually done take place during a time period is the first arc for Kenan and the Charles Show run for Darth Vader, which was really good. I didn't like the fact the book ended with 25 issues. Yeah. Now, the thing with this particular book, this book is written by, now I'm glad the fact they keep the credits basically in here of who wrote this, because it'd be kind of dumb if they don't. It's written by a guy named Randy Sturd. I'm not all that familiar with this guy. The people who work on the comic, not familiar with him at all. The artist working this book is Dave Ross, Lou Antino, and Douglas Whiteley. Nothing really wrong with these artists at all. Mostly, now here's the thing. With the exception of Vader himself, who doesn't show up until halfway through these issues, with the exception of Vader and the Emperor, I'm not familiar with any of these characters. They're probably characters that are probably exclusive to the original EU, because they don't exist in the current canon by Marvel, or at least what Disney basically has done. Now, they do get basically like a license credit for Disney and Lucasfilm, but there's nothing here for Dark Horse, because, well, that's the one published this book, because Dark Horse had licensed for over 20 years. Yeah. I don't know why that my only theory, the reason why Marvel got the license to publish Star Wars comics, and this is my personal theory, because Disney bought Lucasfilm, and they wanted basically everything under one umbrella, so that's the reason why they did it. Yeah. Now, there's nothing really wrong with these issues at all. As a matter of fact, there's a few issues that actually do a crossover with Knights of the Republic. Yeah, there's a comic basically for Knights of the Republic, because when you think of Knights of the Republic, what do you usually think of when you think of that particular name? The video game. A game I personally have never played. My friend Tivia has played it. I'm sure he has probably read these comic books. I, prior to this particular trade, had never read these issues at all. The only really long-running comic I read that was published by Dark Horse that I read via trades was the original Star Wars Legacy series by John Nestor, which was really good, by the way. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah. The artwork in here is actually pretty good. Nothing really wrong with the artwork in here. It's all really good stuff. I do recommend basically fans of, if you're a fan of the original EU, I would definitely recommend this. If you are into new canon, It's up to you if you want to read this. But there's like a few characters in here. You have Jedi Master Conalric, Master Das Jenner, who shows up half of the series. There's stuff with Vector that was a crossover with that, or featured a character from Knights of the Republic who shows up in kind of present day-ish at that point, basically confronting Vader, who knows he's a Sith Lord. It's like, okay, they were thinking that the Mandalorians would take over the Republic. No, it was Sith. It was Sith Lords. The Dark Times series, in my opinion, from the issues that are in here, it's a good series. Great series to read. I do recommend this. People who are fans of the original EU, and people who are curious about what was published by Dark Horse. I give this book roughly a 9 out of 10. I want to give it 9.5, but with the option of Vader and the Emperor, I'm not familiar with these characters. Okay? But that's just me. Okay? I was sort of reading kind of some of the EU books. The comic books I wasn't really getting to very much because I wasn't really bigly interested in it. And after a while, okay, fine. And then less than about a couple years after I got into the Star Wars comics, that's when pretty much Marvel got the license to get the books. Yeah, so I came with the books, I think it was like 2013, 2012, 2013 is when I jumped onto the Star Wars line comics published by Dark Horse. That's when I jumped onto them. I had read some of the stuff. Yeah, I have read a lot of the Dark Horse line. I read some of it, but not a lot of it. Mostly read some one-shots and a couple series. Like two or three ongoing ones. But that's pretty much it when it comes to my experience with the Dark Horse era for Star Wars. I have read the original Marvel line. Yeah, that I did read thanks to their omnibus books. By the way, their omnibus books are not like Marvel's omnibus books, because these are like kind of like basically Dark Horse's like essential line, but published in color. And these books actually cost about $20. Unlike the omnibus line for Marvel, where it costs about $50 or in some cases $100. Yes, I have actually seen it where these big, huge omnibus books. Now I have a couple. I have like one from Marvel where it was originally $100, but I got it for $20 thanks to the store I basically bought these from. Yeah, this book right here. In case you're wondering how much was this book, basically when I bought it from the store, this book was originally $40. Yeah, $40 book. Got this book for $6. Yeah. Thank you, Ollie's, basically, for allowing me to buy this book. I still plan to get more books from Ollie's, basically, they got some new stuff in recently. So expect to see more stuff in that really soon. Now, my next review, which will probably come out later, that will be a review of one other, I think it's like one other book I got from Ollie's, plus a book I got from Barnes & Noble. You'll find about that in a later video when I review Black Clover, okay? To the next view. Bye.